Hey everyone, Cody Menz here with another video going over a new tank that's currently waiting to be released in World of Tanks PC, and it hasn't seen the light of day yet. This is the LTS-85, which is a unreleased Russian premium tier 8 light tank. So as of the World of Tanks 1.22.1 update, currently on the common test server here at the end of September in 2023, we haven't gotten any really hints as to if this tank's coming kind of sooner here in 2023, maybe by holiday ops, or if they're going to hold it until kind of 2024. It does seem, from when this was introduced, that we will see it at some point within the next year or so. And stat-wise, it seems like it's pretty much ready to be released. It doesn't look like it needs many, if any, changes, before it gets released, whether it's during a special event or if it's sold, in some way, shape, or form. It looks like it's going to be a pretty fun, a little bit different than your current Russian tier 8 light tanks. But it looks like it's going to be pretty decent. Now, this tank, based off of what Wargaming has in the client here, their historical reference, says by the mid-1960s, the firepower and armor protection of the PT-76, the only floating tank that saw service in the Soviet armed forces, was no longer sufficient. Therefore, this project, essentially for a new floating tank with more powerful firepower and armor, was developed. The vehicle was to be equipped with a 85mm or 100mm auto-loading gun, which would reduce the number of crew members, this one has only 3, and increase the rate of fire. This basically only existed in blueprints, and they cancelled it and never went forward with it. Now, will they introduce a tank that can float and go through water? We'll see. You never know. Wargaming could come up with basically that gimmick. There are some tanks in the game, from my understanding, that do have that. So like functionality, not in the game, but design wise. However, this would definitely be pretty interesting if they brought that to World of Tanks. And it would definitely change how some maps are played. And I could potentially see Wargaming do that, to be completely honest. Who knows how exactly it would work really well with how basically rounds work, but if in any event, it's interesting. Who knows if they'll bring that. They might just introduce this honestly without that mechanic, but it's interesting nonetheless. Now, getting into armor, basically this thing is through and through a light tank. Don't expect any armor out of this. You might get some extremely lucky bounces if someone's very unfortunate to completely shoot you at almost a 90-degree angle or something, or they get very, very unlucky. This thing practically has no armor compared to say like a LT-432, which has some armor. Now, compared to, so I guess kind of left it as, versus the other tier 8 Russian lights, the LT-432, there's the LTTB, and then there's even the other unreleased T-44 lightweight as well. This tank has pretty decent alpha for a tier 8 light tank, so 300 damage. That's pretty high for a tier 8 light. LT-432 and like the LTTB, they're not the highest damage, per shot light tanks out there at tier 8, but generally speaking, like 300's decent. Penetration, 190mm, not too great, a little bit low for tier 8, but kind of in line with a lot of other light tanks. 250 for the pen for a heat round for your premium round. And then getting into, kind of the gun soft stats, 7 degrees of gun depression is pretty decent. It's the same as that, kind of magical LT-432 that somehow has that, in a super tiny, turret that's completely made up this number. Better than the LTTB though, that only has 5 degrees. The one thing with this tank, so 0.4 accuracy is not very good, so you do pay a little bit for having that higher pen, higher damage per shot. Aiming time as well is a little bit higher, and basically your on-the-move values for a light tank, they're not great, they're not awful though, they're a little bit worse than the LT-432, same as the LTTB more or less though. So basically gun-wise, this thing, you are paying quite a bit for the damage, because 300 damage per shot It's not double, you know, your 180, but you know, it's a pretty noticeable difference. Your DPM though, you know, 1651 for your base value versus 2100 basically for the LT432 and LTTB if you're kind of going to the common denominator there, and then or the T54 lightweight has more than both, but that's not released yet, or FR. So like, is it worth it, you know, to have that higher alpha? You know, some people, you know, you're, I guess, connoisseurs who play the derp, you know, T49 or even the Sheridan. Oh my god. You know, high alpha light tanks do have some role. Is it useful? If you ask me, no. But this is at least different. That's where, you know, if they brought the floating potential, or, you know, like driving, you know, through water better, yeah, I think that would definitely make this a little bit more interesting, because I'm not sure if people are going to like the, you know, low pen because it's a light tank, 300 damage, and then, you know, low DPM combo with bad accuracy. It doesn't seem like it's a really good sell, in my opinion. Hit points 1150, not too bad. That's actually pretty decent for tier 8 light. Armor we went over, pretty much sucks, has nothing. Mobility. So this thing is a little bit slower, top speed wise than the LT432. Same reverse speed, specific power is a little bit lower. However, this thing, when you factor in the current terrain resistance value, it's actually a little bit faster than the LT432, unless you're going down a very steep hill where you're hitting your top speeds. This thing actually beats out the LT432 by a little bit. So mobility is actually pretty good. Traverse speed's good as well. So mobility is a plus for this tank. Now getting to the important bits, since this is a light tank. Concealment. So LT432 beats, you know, basically all the tanks here. Concealment's a little bit better than LTTB, and then your view range 10 meters more than, you know, your two closest companions here for Russian light tanks at tier 8. Does 10 meters of view range negate the extra camo? You know, that's where I don't know the super duper specifics for spotting and stuff, calculations off the top of my head, but I think there's enough of a difference where it's almost a wash, but the LT432 having that extra camo is a bit better, you know, having basically 3% extra camo. So this is, you know, it's not a complete loss for the LTS-85, where it does have a little bit better mobility, but not by much. Worse armor, but better hit points. You know, camo view range, I feel like the LT432 beats it out a little bit. But the main thing is going back to the gun. It's I feel like going to be weird, where yes, it's going to deal some damage, but I feel like having that low TPM, you know, this is kind of like shoot, scoot, and then run away, because you're not going to be able to win in a direct fight because your DPM is that much lower. But having the high alpha is definitely a little bit different, and who knows, maybe they will bring the Bodhi mechanics into Mortal Tanks at some point, and this would be a perfect tank to kind of bring that in and, you know, be a selling feature for it. But that's definitely, you know, more, I guess, rumor and wishing than anything. Anyway though, hopefully you enjoyed this video and this has you a little bit excited for the LTS-85. You know, hopefully we'll see this at some point going from 2023 here into 2024. Thanks again, and I'll see you in another video. Have a good one.